Hello all, let us talk on the first concepts towards the design of experiments, that is probability. Probability is also an advanced statistics form, and here we are going to learn about the concept and the theories. Probability is very important when it comes for hypothesis validation, when it comes to random sampling, as well as we all know that nowadays we are a lot of data around us upon which we are doing a lot of research and analytics as well. So data science is essentially a combination of probability and statistics which works for all kind of analytics for the existing data sets. Now if we say that this is advanced statistics, it means statistical analysis is very important when we do design a research problem, when we formulate the objectives, and when we try to prove the hypothesis with the help of some experiments, right? And when it comes to experiments, when it comes to analysis, you have to have some statistical analysis which is going to test your hypothesis. Your hypothesis is tested by measuring and examining any random sample of the population you have considered. Whatever sample data sets you have, that is called a population, and the analysis upon that data set, right, on those data sets comes under statistical analysis. And there are a lot of different ways by which we can do statistical analysis. We'll start with the probability concept and we will move towards the different theories, starting from the classical theory, that is priori theory, up to the posterior theory leading to conditional probability. So as we all know that probability is not a new term. So the history of this concept has been from years, and this concept has come from the gambling games, which is also known as game of chances. The famous game at that time was tossing a coin, where by default in the 18th century, so we are talking of the 18th century here, and by default the nomenclature that was defined for success and failure was, whenever you have a head, you will succeed in the game, which is denoted by P. Whenever there is a tail, it indicates a failure, denoted by Q. So this is the standard terminology we are all aware of. Let us see some key terms. So the game, which was played by some group of players, call it an experiment. In technical terminology, in statistics, we call this as an experiment. And in this, we can call tossing a coin is my experiment. And then came event. When we say event, event is the group of outcomes, group of outcomes from the sample space. So which means head or tail is going to be the event. Now we have space here, another term. Space is the time for which coin was in air. So now let us just assume we toss a coin in the air, and in air that coin covers some region, right? Now when the coin is in air, can you tell what is the probability? Specifically when the coin is in air. So I'm asking about the probability in space. So whenever you have any sampling, whenever you are doing an experiment, and whenever you have considered a sample space, the probability of happening of any event in that space is always 1. So you can imagine you have flipped a coin, and when the coin is revolving in the air covering some region, so sometimes while revolving, head may appear on the top side, sometimes tail will appear, then head, then tail, and finally when the coin it falls on the hand or on the surface, then we are going to know that if either it is head or tail. So it clearly indicates that probability in space is always 1 because we are not aware whether it is going to be head or tail. Now, when we said probability of success and failure, when we summate the probability of success and failure, it is always equal to 1. So we said probability in space is always equal to 1 and probability of success plus failure is always equal to 1. But once the result comes, your probability, like for the tossing of coin, will be 1 by 2. Why 1 by 2? Because there are two possible outcomes. Now, when the probability concept started with the gambling games, etc., so when people used to toss the coin for long trials or long time, then in that profit or loss was not significant. Which means that either you go for say 100 trials of tossing a coin, and if you have 60 times success, 40 times failure, or 50 success, 50 failures, so that is not going to make any difference when it comes to the analysis of the data sets, right? So here comes the limitation of classical theory of probability, right? Which is we are going to learn when we will discuss this classical theory of probability. So one point that you have to differentiate here is, one note you have to make is, probability is different from statistics. So statistics deals with data and inferences, whereas probability deals with the processes which lie behind the data, or we can say outcome. So there is a clear difference between probability and statistics, and both together make the essential components for data science or data analytics. Another note is that probability is never less than 0 and more than 1. So this is a standard fact which we are all aware of. Let us now move to the classical theory of probability, which is also known as priori theory. We will start with priori theory. Priori theory was proposed in 18th century. It was given by Laplace. The theory states that probability is ratio of number of favorable cases to the number of total equally likely cases. Right? So this is classical theory. The underlying theory says that this is unbiased because every experimentation, every game that was proposed by the players in the 18th century assume that it is going to be unbiased, which means we can say each event is equally likely to occur. Or we can say fair chance is given to everyone. Or you will also find the standard definition that probability that has equal odds of happening something, or odds of something happening, right? So these are all terminologies which is true under classical theory or priori theory of probability. And most of the applications they use, they apply this classical theory of probability. Now let number of favorable cases to be A, let total equally likely cases to be N. So as we said, probability under classical theory is A upon N. So in literature you will get different nomenclature, but the formula is we have to have number of favorable cases to the number of total equally likely cases. Now as we said, probability of success is P and probability of failure is Q, and P plus Q is equal to 1, which also implies that P is equal to 1 minus Q, which means probability of success is equal to 1 minus probability of failure. True. This was classical theory. What is the limitation? As I said, we will move to the limitation starting from classical or the priori theory. Now, the limitation of this classical approach is that it fails to describe the problems when we deviate from the experiment of coin, dice, or cards. This major limitation has led to the second theory of probability emergence, which was known as relative frequency of probability, or we can call this empirical probability. What do we mean when we said the limitation for classical theory? It fails to describe the problems when we deviate from coin, dice, or cards. For example, if you toss a coin 10 times, so you toss a coin 10 times, so if you get 7 heads and 3 tails, it is going to violate your classical theory assumption. As the assumption said, As per the classical theory, what should be the output? The output should have been 5 heads and 5 tails. So we have deviated from the theory of, or we have deviated from the problems related to coin, dice, or cards. We can say that we cannot work with the classical theory of probability. For example, in mountain areas, probability of having rain and not having any rain is not equally likely. It will depend upon the past and some current weather conditions, and then you can tell whether the rain will happen or not, right? So we have to take this in consideration, and we have to define one new theory, that is relative frequency of probability. So this says that in short trials of coins, classical theory will prevail, right? So this relative frequency of probability started with the assumption that if you have short trials of coins, for example, you are taking coin, tossing a coin as an experiment. If you are doing short number of trials, then your above condition may prevail, which is number of favorable cases to the total equally likely cases, right? But if we increase the number of trials, if we increase the number of trials and keep going, what will happen? As we already said, we may get the outcome to approximate equality. This empirical probability is given by number of times of occurrence of any event to total number of trials, right? Which is, if we denote it, it will be P of A upon N. We can see here the classical inbuilt theory, which we have started with A upon N, but now with a limit where number of trials or number of experiment goes towards infinity. So inherently, classical theory can also be implemented through it, right? We can always implement the classical theory or priori theory. But if we keep on increasing the number of experiment, we have started with the first experiment, second, then third, then fourth, and so on, and we are moving towards infinity, right? So outcome which will be which will happen from this empirical probability will be to approximate equality, right? Which means that when you have long trials, what will happen? Output deviates from expected. As we already said, if you are doing a long number of trials on any experiment, so whether it is loss or it is profit will not be significant, and the output which is expected will deviate from its actual behavior. So this actually became the limitation for empirical probability, and the limitation said that it is practically not good to increase the trials and find out the point of equality. Because after 100 trials, suppose you got 60 40 50 50 or in such ratio the output from that particular experiment, so you are trying to approximate the equality, right, which is not practically good when it comes to validation of the hypothesis, or you are trying to test your experiment and prove the correctness for that, right? So in case you are trying to prove any theory, so this is not very good idea to prove equality by increasing the number of trials upon that experiment, upon that data set or sample population. So this was the major limitation of the empirical probability. And into this empirical probability, we can talk of nature of output. If your sample space is discrete, then it will be different. If it is continuous, then the nature of output will be different. So discrete means when you are not going to give the exact result to the hypothesis, right? And you have continuous, which means your hypothesis validation may pass. So we will discuss this during the RM lecture. What is hypothesis? What is null hypothesis? How do we formulate a hypothesis? And what are all characteristics, right? How do we do sampling, etc. So as we said, this is not practically good. So now we will talk for the third approach, that is subjective approach into probability. The next concept, right? So the subjective approach was given by Ramsay in 1926. This theory is based upon the degree of confidence, as the name suggests, that this is a subjective approach. So it could be degree of confidence or it could be degree of belief. And what is the degree of belief? In the happening of the event, which may range from 0 to occurrence. So this was the approach which was proposed by Ramsay in 1926. It is a non-quantitative approach, as we cannot see any quantitative information. So we are mostly relied upon the degree of confidence, or we are mostly relied on the degree of belief in happening of any event. So this is, we can say, non-quantitative information and personalistic concept, because this will differ from individual to individual to decide, right, to give this. So this is very, very broad. Subjective approach was considered as the broad and highly flexible approach, but it need very careful assignment of the probabilities, right? Whatever belief says that this is the probability of happening of an event, that need very careful assignment. The values has to be carefully assigned. So as we said, highly flexible as well as a broad approach. For example, if we say what is the probability of getting first division in the subject of term of Mr. or Miss A, right? Now, if we try to find out this probability of getting first division, so this is completely based upon belief of the teacher who is teaching that course, and how the belief of happening of any event will be validated. It will be on the basis of the internal marks maybe. So there could be different components which a teacher could decide: assignment marks, midterm marks, and based upon this, I could be confident, I could have a belief that the probability of getting A plus or A of a particular student in this particular course is this. Now, what is the limitation when we say probability depending upon the belief or confidence level? As we said, consistency has to be maintained. So you have to formulate a single policy upon which you are going to maintain the consistency, so that you can calculate the probability for different data sets or different clusters in your sample space. And another thing is you need careful assignment of the values, as we have stated above. So if we have randomly given some values, suppose I have not carefully looked upon the internal marks or the assignment marks, so I may presume that yes, the range into which the assignment marks of this particular student will fall is from 5 to 10 if it is a 10 mark assignment. So I'm not very sure whether it will be 6, 7, 8, 9 or 10 itself. So this is going to make a difference for sure when it comes to grading of a class with 100 or 200 students, right? So when you have this sample population which is more than a number, say threshold, say 30 or 50, so you have to be very careful when you are doing the probability calculation for different data points in your sample space, right? So this approach has the limitation, and based upon this limitation we will move to the fourth concept of probability, which is known as axiomatic approach. Axiomatic approach is based upon the concept of sum of probability. It was given by Kolmogorov in 1933. And the whole field of probability under this was based on following axioms. So there were axioms upon which the whole field of probability relied for some finite sample space. Axiom 1 says, we have already learned this, probability of event range from 0 to occurrence. Axiom 2 says that probability of entire sample space is equal to 1, which is denoted by probability of S is equal to 1. Now this axiomatic approach define probability as if you have two events, say A and B, and these two events are mutually exclusive or disjoint events, then probability is P of A plus P of B. As we said, A and B are mutually exclusive, or we call them disjoint events, which means one does not affect the other. So we will learn some more terms as well at the end of this lecture about different type of events, right? So this is axiomatic approach which rely upon two axioms: probability of event range from 0 to occurrence and probability of entire space is 1, and it is given by P of A intersection B, which is P of A plus P of B. This is true when your events are mutually exclusive or they are disjoint events, right? Now if the events are not mutually exclusive and both occur simultaneously, it means axiomatic approach need to be modified. Now the modified axiomatic approach says that probability of A union B is probability of A plus probability of B minus probability of A intersection B. Similarly, we can write for three events. If we have two events here, A and B, now assume you have three events. So the probability of A or B or C will be equal to P of A plus P of B plus P of C minus P of A intersection B minus P of A intersection C minus P of B intersection C plus P of A intersection B intersection C. So whenever we have disjoint events, the probability of A intersection B will be always equal to 0. As we said, we have disjoint events. So whenever you have to understand the probability or you want to calculate the probability, for example, let's say that find the probability of taking a heart and spade from a deck of cards, right? We are talking of heart and spade. And if the events are disjoint events, right, these two events are disjoint events, then this intersection will be equal to 0, right? And if we have to calculate the probability of heart or spade, then we have to calculate the probability of heart plus probability of spade minus probability of heart and spade, right? But we are talking about the disjoint event, but lately we will understand what are independent event and how do they differ from mutually exclusive event and how the probability will be calculated in that case, right? So again intersection will be 0, so this will come out to be half, right? And probability of heart and spade, if these are two disjoint events, then this could be 0, this will be 0. Let us now see the terminology of different types of events. So we have already learned that there is experiment. Let us write this formally. It is an act that can be repeated randomly under some given conditions. Then we understand that there is an event. It is the outcome of a random experiment. So it could be certain or it could be an impossible event, an event which cannot occur, or there is an event which will definitely happen. Then we have independent event, when the two events are independent, when outcome of one event does not affect and is not affected by the outcome of other event. Then we have dependent event, where occurrence or non-occurrence of one event in single trial affects the possibility of other events in other trials. Then you have equally likely events, where if one event does not occur more often than the other. It means if you are tossing a coin, then there are equal chances of happening of head and tail. If you are tossing it 10 times, then 5 times it should be head and 5 times it should be tail. Then we have simple event, which means happening or not happening of a single event. Then we have compound events, where we consider joint occurrence of two or more events. Then we have complementary events, let there be two events A and B. Now A is complementary of B and vice versa if A and B are mutually exclusive and exhaustive. So P of A and B is equal to P of AB, which is P of A into P of B minus P of AB. So in the same example of deck picking heart or spade in the deck of cards, if we have complementary events, right? So if the events are mutually exclusive, they are exhaustive, means we have considered the all the possible outcomes, then the probability will be calculated for heart and spade as P of AB, which is P of A into P of B minus P of AB. So as we have new term, that is exhaustive events, it means when the event's totality include all possible outcomes. So these are exhaustive events. So this is all for today's lecture. Next we will start with conditional probability, and into that we will learn about the dependent events and the independent events. From the multiplication theory of probability, we will move towards the conditional probability and how it works, and then how it leads to the revised probability, that is Bayes theorem, which is very very important, or we call this as posterior theory of probability as well. Thank you.